Double jump or don't say a word. Move my head around like a startled bird. Can't do housework when I choose. When I win, I convince myself I lose. Fabric feels weird against my skin. I gotta hold my breath when I take out the bin. Can't go out cause it's too hot and bright. I can't sleep at night cause there's too much light. The bees in my brain won't let me speak. My thought process is quite unique. The mask comes off and now I'm weird. Everything is as I feared. Living in this world can be quite a chore. We've all had enough, but we still want more. Leave me alone, I don't want interference. Hey, no, mate, that's the autistic experience.
Hello and welcome to the Autistic Experience, your one-stop shop podcast for neurodivergent news, commentary, advice, guinea pigs, and all sorts of other fun things in between. New episodes come out every Sunday at midday British time, and whilst you're not listening to this, which as far as I understand can be quite a long time, you can go follow us on Instagram at the Autistic Experience. My name is Kieran, as always joined by Chloe.
Hello.
Hi. Now Chloe is a bit sniffly this week.
Yes, I'm not feeling very well.
So she might need quite a lot of turning up on the gain for this week's episode.
My throat is a bit sore.
Yeah.
But I will try.
Yeah, Chloe's a bit low energy this week, so we'll see how this goes, shall we? Before we get stuck into looking at all the random bits of news that have gone on this week, we're going to drop right in to home news. As we said, quite low energy. Now, home news, if you haven't listened to this before, is the bit where we tell you about what we've been up to, because it makes us seem more human.
Yeah.
I'm told.
And also we can share any ridiculous antics that we've gone up
there's
to
a lot
the
of
past week.
Accidentally ridiculous things has gone on.
Yeah. Oh, you know what has actually happened in the last week? I fell off my bike.
Oh, yeah, you did.
And I've scraped all my knees.
You got into a... Oh, I was going to say you got into a car accident, but that's not that one. You just fell off.
No, I got hit by a car last Wednesday.
Yeah.
And then the following Monday, so 4 days later, I fell off my bike by myself.
Yeah.
And injured myself.
Yeah. Luckily, we'd recently installed a camera onto the front of your bike, so we've got a lovely POV shot of you just decking it.
Yep, we have. And then having to cycle back with wonky handlebars because I didn't put together the quite obvious information on how to straighten them again.
Yeah.
So I just went, there is nothing I can possibly do here. I must cycle back wonky.
Yeah.
And then I actually set off for work 2 days later, and I didn't realise or remember that they were wonky until I got about halfway down our road. And then I went, oh yeah, I ain't changed those.
Just got used to it.
Got used to wonk.
Used to it.
As we do.
Mm-hmm. Getting used to the wonk.
Getting used to things being a bit on the cank.
Is that a Birmingham thing?
Canky? I don't know. On the conk, I feel like is probably the word, but yes. Any other news that you want to mention?
Well, let's see. Otherwise, you've been learning to drive.
I have a little brief bit of driving.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I've started learning to drive. I have never driven before, ever. I've started a car once in my life, and that's it.
Yeah.
And Kieran here is my instructor.
Yay.
So he's teaching me to drive, to a point, because he's not an official instructor.
Well, no, but...
I learn with him and then do
it's fine.
like one official lesson and then take my test. But I don't want to pay for tests, lessons even.
Lessons are very expensive, aren't they?
Yeah, so I'm just scrounging off Kieran's knowledge. Anyway, so far, I mean, we've
not crashed.
We've done a bit. We haven't crashed. I did kind of go up on the curb once, but it wasn't that bad, was it?
No.
I've been pulled out on twice. So, but I didn't crash into them, so
No,
that's good.
neither of which were your fault.
Yeah, they were both idiots.
Yeah.
I mean, you're the driver, so you're the feedback giver on how I'm doing, I think. But I think I'm doing okay, and...
Well, we've got up into second gear.
Yeah.
We've done 2 lessons.
Yeah. A gear per lesson.
A gear per lesson.
That means next time we get to go into third.
Oh dear.
Woohoo! And then fourth. And then fifth.
Good.
Get ready for motorway
Now,
practice.
we'll do one in a reverse gear as well. That still counts.
Yeah, true. Maybe that one should be next before I go too fast.
Yeah, maybe.
But no, it's going all right, and it's been a bit stressful because there's so much to think about, and it feels like it's going a lot faster than it actually is when you're controlling it for the first time.
Yeah.
And I'm like hyper aware of like avoiding other people's parked cars and not damaging anything, and so that's quite stressful. But I would say kind of like overall, I haven't had too many problems.
No, I think it's going all right so far. I've just thought of a really good, not necessarily a really good segue, but a reason to kind of tie this into our overarching podcast theme.
Oh, yeah.
Because I would be fascinated to have a look at the proportion of autistic people who, for whatever reason, don't drive.
I was just sort of thinking on that while I was talking, and like I can see why driving would be quite a difficult sensory experience, because it is stressful. Like you've got a lot to look at. There's a lot going on. Like if you've got music playing or the radio or somebody in the car, like you've got stuff to listen to as well, and like you've got to look at what everyone else is doing. Like it's just a lot of information to process. So that it could be quite stressful for a lot of people, I think.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's kind of the main reason I think, you know, if there is a higher proportion of autistic people or ADHD people or otherwise neurodivergent people who don't drive, it's probably just due to the sheer number of things you have to pay attention to.
Yeah.
Because you've got to mechanically drive the car, but also you've got to look out the mirrors and, you know, keep an eye out for other people, and there's all sorts of stuff going on that you've got to pay attention to.
Yeah.
Which is by far the most difficult thing to actually get to grips with. That's the steepest bit of the learning curve for actually driving, because like right at the beginning you've got to learn to both mechanically drive and also pay attention to everything around you, because unless for whatever reason you happen to own a couple of acres of land, you cannot learn to drive in a safe environment or an environment where there are no other cars.
Yeah.
You basically have to learn on the road, and depending on where that road is, the other drivers, I mean, it's one thing I always say to you is like, assume every other driver on the road wants to kill both you and themselves.
Yeah.
And as demonstrated by the number of people who have pulled out on you whilst you've been driving with very obvious L plates on, that's probably a bit more true than maybe initially thought it was.
Yes.
But I think it's a bit of a shame, really, because if you take out having to interact with all the other drivers on the road, which I think is the main off-putting reason of driving, at least for me, that's the most understandable reason to not want to actually drive. The actual mechanics of it and actually controlling it, I think, really plays well to the autistic brain, because it's very detail-oriented. There is a very strict order to everything you do. There's a reason for everything you do.
Yeah.
So, like, you know, you change gear, you put the clutch in, you change gear, clutch back out, accelerator. There is a set order for doing that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And doing that and doing it like smoothly and well, that's very pleasing. And I think quite a lot of maybe I want to say like older autistic people who don't realize they're autistic. I'm talking like, 60 plus years now. So like older autistic people. They're the ones who would always get involved in like classic cars and like tinkering with engines and everything, because there are so many different moving parts, and you've got to pay attention to how it all works.
Yeah.
And it's very detailed, and you can keep everything very clean and neat.
Yeah.
So I think, similarly to, trains is the classic one, but like those sorts of very mechanical things, that's kind of like autism magnets, basically.
Yeah.
So the actual like pure driving, I think, is actually very autistic friendly because you control everything.
Yeah.
You control the speed you're going at, you control the direction you're going, the sound from the speakers, you can, change the temperature, you can control everything while you're driving, apart from the other people on the road.
Yeah, and it's like you can move around in your own little transport bubble and be safe. But I think the other people are so annoying because the classic reasons of as we've said, we like things to be predictable, and we also get really annoyed when people don't follow the rules.
Yeah. Both
of which are things that a lot of other drivers have issues with. Being predictable and following rules.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what makes it hard.
Yeah.
And I found that starting out, and I know I've only just started, so it's expected that it'd be stressful, but after doing just one lesson, when we started the second one, I was kind of genuinely sitting there thinking, I don't know if I want to learn to drive. I don't know if it's worth it, because like just trying to move the car and focus on moving it and not messing up it, like the mechanical part, but then also avoiding the parked cars, avoiding the people pulling out on me when they shouldn't have, like people parking stupidly, which makes you doing things really difficult because you can't see properly or you can't do corners properly, like whatever. Like it's just so stressful that I was like, I don't know if it's worth it. I might just not.
No, well I basically had that before every lesson that I took. I was like, oh no, here we go again.
Yeah. But it is good to do because you do get like your environment that you can control. You can make it as comfortable as possible, and it's very freeing because it can get you to places that you couldn't get to before, like places that are too difficult to get to by like on foot, too far to get to on a bike or by foot, places that are too expensive. You don't have to go on the bus
where there are other people.
You can avoid all the public and the noise of being on buses and trams and trains and things. So
yeah, it's a cruel irony, isn't it?
It's a weird one, but once I'm feeling more confident, I'm sure I'll enjoy it. Because I can put my tunes on and I can jam out. And plus when I'm driving, I can be like, I can turn the temperature down if I'm getting too warm, which is something that really bothers me when other people are driving. And also on long journeys, I hate asking drivers to stop at services to go to the loo. I don't know why, but I just don't like doing it because I feel like I'm inconveniencing people. I'm like, I'm breaking the journey for no reason. Whereas if I was driving, I'd be like, oh, I need to go to the toilet. I'm just pulling over for a bit. It's nice to be in control. You don't have to kind of be like, I'm sorry, but can we please stop for a toilet break?
As I said, it's the irony that the actual driving part of it and being in control, that's very autism friendly. It's just everyone else on the road.
Typical. Anyway.
Anyway, before this turns into an episode of Autistic Top Gear, which I think would probably be quite a good idea.
It would be quite interesting, wouldn't it? You imagine?
Yes, I can imagine. And like, in order to save our own time, I won't go into it because we could just start on pitching Autistic Top Gear.
See, I'm going down the road of like ADHD Top Gear as well.
Yeah.
The combination of being incredibly like impulsive and having no boundaries with autism. It would be interesting. Otherwise, on home news, I don't really think we've had a very busy week, have we?
It's been fairly quiet, I think.
Which is nice. We like that.
Yeah.
Nice and easy.
So, in that nice, easy style, how about we smooth on over? What? Smooth on over to neurodivergent news. Now, as usual, we've picked a couple of news articles, news stories, whatever you want to call them, that have kind of seemed kind of interesting on the outset at the very least, based on neurodivergent people or neurodivergent traits or commentary on other neurodivergent bits and bobs. So our first article for today was posted up on the 23rd of November on Vice, and its title is How Neurodivergent People Are Challenging Conventional Notions of Romance. Now, I'm not sure what you thought about this article, Chloe, but I think it starts quite promisingly.
Yeah.
Because it starts talking about like how relationships are difficult normally, but the thing you need to kind of get around to doing is start figuring out what relationships mean to you, and then it kind of draws this link between neurodivergent brains having to do that during regular life anyway. So being able to kind of form your own relationship or kind of define your own rules is quite handy.
Yeah.
But I think, I mean, this isn't an article review show, granted, but it does seem to kind of tail off a little bit towards the end. It kind of feels like it's aiming for a point and then just doesn't make it.
Yeah, I can kind of see what you mean by that. And it doesn't really make any points about how neurodivergent people are challenging like relationship standards. It's just like, oh, people that are neurodivergent can experience difficulties, which can lead to mental health issues and further difficulties.
Yeah.
That's kind of it.
Yeah, as you said, like, it doesn't actually say how neurodivergent people challenge conventional notions of romance, which is kind of ironic considering the title of the article is How Neurodivergent People Are Challenging Conventional Notions of Romance. So it sets up this question and then does not answer it.
Yeah, well, it's like you said, they seem to kind of start answering it at the beginning and then just sort of
forget,
go off somewhere else.
Yeah, I thought maybe that they came up with the idea and went, oh yeah, this is good, and then just either forgot about it or just ran out of time.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I thought what we could do is maybe just finish the article for them.
Have you got a start?
Yeah,
Would you like to start?
Well, I mean, as we said, it talks about the idea that neurodivergent brains during everyday life have to contend with things being kind of a bit different and having to make your own rules to be able to function properly. And that's, that is more or less what you need to do in a relationship. You can't necessarily stick to societal norms within those because you're different people. What works in one relationship won't necessarily work in another one. And being able to kind of put together that slightly more personal approach that like we tend to do anyway, as I've often said, the answer to everything is it depends.
Yeah.
If you apply that to a relationship, you don't make any big assumptions. You kind of work together to figure out what's best. As I said, we do that anyway.
Yeah.
So I think what it wants to try and say about how neurodivergent people are challenging conventional notions of romance is that we don't pay attention to any conventional notions of romance. So just because other people are doing it one way doesn't mean we're going to do it that way, because it's not necessarily going to work.
Yeah, well, I think like it makes some good points about how that's hard, because I do agree that, like, especially if you're not diagnosed and you go into adulthood undiagnosed, then you can struggle in relationships and not really understand why. Which, as it says, can kind of lead to, issues with yourself, maybe like anxiety or reluctance to kind of open up to people. But when you were saying that, I thought actually this article doesn't really talk about anything that is neurodivergent specific, because everybody has the same problems with relationships.
Yeah.
Like you said, no two relationships are the same. So everybody's going to have to figure out how to make their own relationship work uniquely to their relationship. But I think the thing that's worth, thinking about, especially with neurodivergent ones, is kind of communication styles, like what the other person is kind of sensitive to, what they can tolerate. maybe any kind of sensory things that could affect a relationship. So if somebody doesn't like kind of physical contact with other people, then they might find that part of a relationship hard.
Yeah.
Some people might find like being intimate weird because they don't like the sensory experience of that.
Mm-hmm.
That's more neurodivergent struggles rather than like the stuff they talk about is quite general to everybody, where it's like everyone's different.
Well, that's kind of why I do think this article is aimed at neurotypical people.
Yeah.
Because it kind of tries to bridge that gap and it doesn't get too far into specifics of like sensory issues and like any issues with, you know, the classic sort of anxiety, depression side of things and overthinking and all that stuff, because it doesn't get clicks.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think the important thing is to take from that and to take from what we're saying is that every relationship is different and neurodivergent ones can probably come with more struggles than neurotypical ones because we kind of struggle with things and suffer from things that other people don't. But as long as you express that and kind of communicate that, and as we've kind of found, like you get to know the person and appreciate their kind of sensitivities and where they're coming from, then it's not really a problem.
No.
You just have to be sensitive to the other person, really. And that's kind of it.
Anyway, jumping onto the next story we've got for you today. This was published on the 22nd of November by the National Autistic Society, so that's autism.org.uk, and it is, on the face of it, kind of boring. So let's see how we spice it up. It is their response to the autumn statement. Now, if you're listening to this from outside the UK, or in fact listening to it in the UK, you might not understand what the autumn statement is.
I didn't until I looked at this.
So basically, this is the point where the Chancellor of the Exchequer, the one in charge of the money in the British government, stands outside Downing Street with a big red briefcase and tells everyone how they're going to spend our money. That's the short version anyway.
Oh, Lord. Well, the autumn statement, from what I can gather, because I did actually try to look at it so I could understand this article better, is like a good over 100 pages long on the government website. And I just thought, no.
Not worth it.
No, I'm good. I'm okay, actually.
But some of the points this article makes is that the government is trying to encourage disabled people to work from home so that they don't need to claim unemployment benefit.
Yeah.
But the work from home jobs they say to get don't exist.
Yeah. I mean, generally the jobs don't exist.
Yeah,
but...
because it says that 16% of working adults and 18% of disabled workers work exclusively at home. So only work at home.
Yeah.
So if you're physically disabled and you can't go anywhere, then you would have to work exclusively from home.
Yep.
And only 18% of disabled workers do. But then, of course, this uses the figure of only 29% of autistic adults are in work.
Yeah.
At all. So if we take an 18% of those 29%, that's about 5% of autistic adults are able to work from home exclusively.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is the article actually mentions that most autistic adults want to work.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
They just can't.
Yeah,
because either like suitable jobs don't exist or they try it and they don't get on with it. There's all sorts of problems with trying to work as an autistic person.
Yeah. That is very much the thing. Like, we want to be able to work. We want to go and do stuff. We want to earn money. But if the jobs that would suit us and that we can do don't exist, then we can't do them.
Yep.
The jobs that aren't suited for us, we can't do them.
Therefore, you get a lot of autistic people claiming unemployment support.
Yeah, and let's not talk about actually trying to claim any sort of personal independence payments, because that's a routine in itself, because basically every single person gets denied the first time, and you kind of have to take it to tribunal because the person doing the assessment the first time is in no way medically trained.
Yeah, and then you go, oh, well, let's just go on like universal credit or something then, because it's probably easier. But then if you do that, you've got like your job centre
Breathing down your
person
neck.
constantly like, here's jobs. How many jobs have you applied for this week? How many jobs have you applied for? That's not enough jobs. And you're like, oh my God, please. Please stop. I can only apply for certain jobs. Like
I have to take a run up. I need to put my entire brain into applying for this one, and it takes me 3 days.
Yeah. They're like, you haven't applied for 70 jobs in the last week since we last spoke, and therefore you're not getting your universal credit this month.
And I've scrolled through 700 pages of job adverts.
Yeah.
None of them look nice.
And that's, I think, the problem that this article is talking about is
Right,
that
we got there in the end.
the things that the government are saying that they're going to do in this autumn statement do not make it any easier for autistic people to get into work.
No.
They're just kind of like providing a bit of an incentive to try, like a bit more, but it's like they already want to.
Yeah.
They don't need incentives to try and do it. They need a way to actually be able to do it without it ruining their lives, mental health.
All right, let's hop on to the final story we've got for today, and it's a bit more of a fun one. This one comes from Psychology Today, but it was actually posted last week.
It's
So
Psychology not today.
Psychology last week. And the article is entitled 5 Ways Improv Can Help People with Autism. Now, is there any wonder that I picked this one out?
I wonder why.
I wonder.
I didn't possibly think that when I looked at the title. I didn't go, oh my God, what a surprise.
Now, if you fancy having a read of this, or in fact any of the other articles we've talked about, we'll put references to them on the Instagram page. I don't really need to read it because I can probably tell you how it helps, because I do a fair amount of improv around the place, not as like a improv comedy thing, but it's part of a podcast occasionally. And I'd say it does help quite a lot, because it helps you become not necessarily more confident, but it helps you listen, I think,
Yeah.
to other people. It's kind of active listening.
Yeah. Because you've got to respond to
Yeah.
things,
You basically
haven't
got to take what the other person says and then kind of build on it, and then you form this kind of collaborative partnership.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I can't necessarily say it helps in the day-to-day kind of a thing, because when I do it, it becomes much more of a performative thing.
Yeah.
So when I'm doing it, I'm looking for laughs.
Yeah.
So if someone's trying to talk to me about something serious, I can't just switch into serious mode and then go through that. It doesn't work that way.
Mm-hmm.
But equally, like I do think improv is particularly suited to, I think, especially for ADHD brains, because that's all about just making connections between things. It goes, okay, this person said this thing, what can I link that to? And that's one thing the ADHD brain does, if anything, too much.
Oh, I know.
So sometimes you can just sit back and go, okay, brain, go.
Yeah. I think it's nice to kind of open that up, because we have to spend so much time policing that
Yeah.
and keeping it under control, that to have an opportunity to just open it up and let it run wild.
Let it run. Yeah, it's like a horse. You've got to you take the saddle off and just let it run wild for a bit.
Who knows what it's going to come out with, but everything is fine here. Like, everything is accepted. Whereas if you're like at work or something, you can't really just come out with whatever you want. You've got to kind of keep it appropriate.
One thing this article does say is, like, one of the things it helps with is the idea of knowing when is your turn to talk.
Yeah.
Because if someone is saying something and you're kind of doing some improv, you don't interrupt them.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of rude and takes off the flow. And if there was something you were going to say beforehand, you kind of have to just let it go.
Yeah.
which is really difficult to do in regular conversation because you're like, I've got this really good idea, and you focus on it so hard that you can't listen to anything that's going on.
Yeah.
So you've kind of got to just go, okay, brain, yeah, that was a fun idea. If it comes back to it, we'll do it. But let's just focus on what they're saying now, because you're not moving things forward in any sort of meaningful way.
Yeah, I mean, interrupting people during conversation is something that I struggle with sometimes, that I'll have a thought about something they've said and it will just come out immediately.
Yeah.
And I have to go, oh sorry, like, carry on. That was my bad. So practicing that, I think I can see how that would be beneficial.
I think the important part of the whole idea of improv being good for autistic ADHD brains is that there aren't any like wrong answers in improv.
Yeah.
So we spend a huge amount of our lives being told this isn't the right way, you need to do it this way for no particular reason. And there it's like the rule is yes and. So you agree with what the other person says and then build on it.
Yeah.
So no one's going, no, that's not happening. No, you can't do this. No, your weird idea is too weird. You go, okay, let's take that and see what we can make with it.
Yeah.
I think that's enough news for the time being. How about we get on to someone's personal problems?
Yep. I like the sound of that.
By which I mean it's time for Question of the Week. All right, so this is the bit of the show where we poke our little eyes into someone's personal life and try and make sense of it. So good luck to us. Can barely make sense of our own personal lives.
That's
So
exactly what I was going to
what
say.
we do with someone else's. Bear with me on this one. There's not a lot of punctuation. This one says, how to get assessed in the UK. So it says, I have only recently begun suspecting that I may be autistic and have been trying to be put on the assessment waiting list. However, my GP has told me the letter has been sat on her desk and hasn't been touched because she says it's because she has ADHD. But I really need to be assessed. I think I've been masking my whole life, but now it's all crashing down on me because I just can't keep it up anymore. I'm just struggling. It's impacted my education, which caused me to drop out from secondary and college. I didn't know you could drop out of secondary school. Which has impacted my mental health and self-esteem / confidence. I don't know what to do. Advice would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
That's a toughie because, as we've talked about many times, the answer to how to get assessed in the UK at the moment is
good luck.
No. Yeah.
If we knew the answer to that.
Like, I've been waiting for how long? 4 or 5 months?
A while now.
Quite a while. To the actual question of how to get assessed privately.
Well,
or no, basically.
I mean, we can answer this from the practical standpoint and then the kind of more personal standpoint.
Yeah.
So practically, you can do it in one of 3 ways. First, you can go private, which tends to cost quite a lot of money.
Yes.
But can be done fairly quickly. But also at that point, you need to try and get your GP to accept the diagnosis, which is more difficult now than it used to be.
Yeah.
Secondly, you can go through your GP. This is what the poster, I think, has done. They've kind of asked their GP. They'll give you some forms to fill out, maybe an AQ50, and then they'll just send it off, and then you'll eventually get handed over to whatever mental health trust is operating in your area. The third option is going through Right to Choose, which is what you're doing.
That is.
It's very similar to the second one. You kind of ask your GP to refer you via the Right to Choose program, in which, you know, they provide you some paperwork to fill in, some questionnaires, etc., etc. How the Right to Choose system works is basically that the NHS will outsource your referral to their private clinic. Depending on where you live in the UK, it's something like Psychiatry UK, which a few months ago closed their intake, but have now reopened it, I assume because of backlash, and basically they'll take it from there. So the idea is that Right to Choose may be a bit quicker. It depends on the waiting lists in your local area, but it's all a bit of a mess right now. I would probably say if you're going for an autism assessment, Right to Choose is probably the way to go. Whereas ADHD, on the other hand, there's been a whole mess about right to choose in private clinics with ADHD. So, like, that's kind of the reason I'm keeping mine just on the NHS at the moment. I mean, it's been a year, and I really need to phone up one day to see how that's going.
Probably not going, I think.
Probably not going, but it'd be still nice to know.
Yeah. I mean, I would say personally that if you've got the ability to do it privately and you want a diagnosis,
that's probably the way to do it quickly.
Yeah, like if you just want to be diagnosed like quickly, then private.
Yeah,
definitely. But
be prepared to try get your GP to accept.
Yeah.
The diagnosis.
Yeah.
But I think if they've already kind of talked to you about it, then they're probably a bit more receptive to a diagnosis rather than just you turning up and go, hey,
I'm suddenly autistic.
So yes, we're moving on to the events which are coming up in the next week in and around the UK, mostly in. So as usual, these events are designed for us neurodivergent folk, not for parents and carers of. So our first one is on the 29th of November. So this coming Wednesday, it is at Northampton Cathedral between 10 o'clock in the morning and 1 o'clock in the afternoon. It's the Autism and the Sensory Environment, Understanding and Managing the Challenges.
That sounds interesting, actually.
So it says, I'll just read the most important bit. It says, we provide a safe, open space in which to explore, discuss, and gain more knowledge about, it says the 8 senses, so I'd be fascinated to find out what the other 3 are. We will discuss how sensory challenges can affect the behaviour of autistic people and why, what strategies can be used to reduce the sensory environment's effect on autistic people, and what adjustments can be made to the environment to help with these difficulties. Well, we can answer part of that. Sunglasses, earplugs. So don't need those 3 hours anymore.
Universal helpers. All you need in life, sunglasses and earplugs.
Yeah. Take that, the Beatles.
All you need is sunglasses and earplugs.
Yeah, it doesn't fit quite as well, does it?
All you need is sunglasses and earplugs. Sunglasses and earplugs is all you need.
Yeah, we'll workshop it. So yeah, that one is free to attend. So if you're in the Northampton sort of area on Wednesday the 29th, then just pop down to the cathedral and see what is going on. Otherwise, the day after, on the 30th of November, at the Primrose Hill Community Association in London, it's in northwest London, is the We Are Inclusive Lego Club.
I'm down for that.
So admittedly, this does seem to be more of a kind of a thing for more children to go to. So if anyone out there wants to form an inclusive adults Lego club, then I'm just saying that would be a very, very good idea.
I think you'll find that actually the title of the event was We Are Inclusive, and therefore I think that adults like me will be welcome. But an adults one would be good, because if it was like adults only, then you wouldn't have to deal with young children, and I don't want to deal with that, so I'm also in favour of that. Yeah,
but it seems this is on every Thursday, actually, so it's a repeating thing. It's from 4:30 till 5:30, so if it is in fact for children only, then maybe you're an autistic adult with an autistic child, and you can both go down there and have a good time. And then our last event for this week, coming up on Saturday the 2nd of December, is Neuroqueer, a book chat with CJ DeBarra. So this is at the Query, spelt Queery. It's in Brighton. So it says CJ DeBarra is a queer, non-binary and neurodivergent individual at a crossroads in their mid-30s. They're Irish.
Hey.
And it's kind of a talk about kind of relationships and general like kind of life self-help sort of a thing as a non-binary ND person.
Nice. I like it.
So it's free to go to if you're in the Brighton area. Sorry if we sound distracted, by the way. Our guinea pigs are like sprinting around the cage.
Freaking out.
Yeah, I think they're getting quite hungry now, so we should probably... that's between 7 and 8 in the evening on this coming Saturday. But that's it for the events, and that's it for the episode. If you forgot any of the details of any of the events or wanted to have a read of any of the articles we talked about today, good news. They will all have references on our Instagram page at the Autistic Experience, so you can have a look for yourself, make your own opinions, and if you fancy going along to any of the events, then feel free. New episode will be along next Sunday at midday British time, and if we remember to plan it in, we will hopefully be talking about some of our gift-giving practices.
Oh, yes.
We can do our gift-giving guide.
Oh, no, actually. Oh, no.
So I look forward to that next week, as well as the usual... the usual supply of neurodivergent news. And we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye. See you next week.